My name is Dion Falk, and I will be the facilitator for our ETAG meeting tonight. I'm with the California Department of Toxic Substance Control, and I'm a public participation specialist in the Office of Environmental Equity, supporting the Exide project. Our PowerPoint presentation has now started, and you should be able to see our PowerPoint presentation on your screen for tonight's meeting. All of our meeting materials are available in English and Spanish and are accessible at www.dtsc.ca.gov/Exide. Now I'd like to go over our meeting guidelines with you. We want you to be aware that by participating in this meeting, you understand that this meeting is being recorded. You may be muted for background noise. We want everyone in this meeting to have an opportunity to participate. So we ask that you limit your comments during the meeting. This ETAG meeting will focus on the residential cleanup and the Exide facility closure. However, if you have other Exide questions, please call our DTSC hotline number. That number is 844-225-3887. Again, our DTSC hotline number is 844-225-3887. To support language captions this evening, simultaneous audio interpretation is available for this meeting. Click the interpretation globe icon at the bottom of your screen and select a language. For Spanish-only audio by phone, please call 877-920-8432 and enter code 741-502#. Again, if you're calling by Spanish-only audio, we want you to call 877-920-8432 and enter code 741-502#. Our presentation slides, again, are available in Spanish at dtsc.ca.gov/public forums. Automated closed captions have been turned on for this meeting. You can turn them off if you wish by clicking the CC icon at the bottom of your screen or moving the captions box. Please note that these captions are provided for your convenience only and are not the official transcript of this meeting. This ETAG public community meeting is being presented to you by the California Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Toxic Substances Control, also known as DTSC. Our mission is to protect California's people and the environment from harmful effects of toxic substances by restoring contaminated resources, enforcing hazardous waste laws, reducing hazardous waste generation, and encouraging the manufacture of chemically safe products. On slide 6, this is our agenda. Our agenda is going to outline the meeting here tonight. First, we will hear from our co-chairs. Then we will move into our presentations for the evening, followed by a Q&A period. Again, our goal is to be considerate of everyone's time and end on time at 7:30. Slide 7. Now I'd like to welcome and introduce our co-chairs, Dr. Meredith Williams, Director of the Department of Toxic Substances Control, and Mark Lopez with East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice. I will now turn it over to our co-chairs to bring their opening remarks. Dr. Williams?
Thank you, Dion, and welcome everyone to this ETAG meeting. These meetings are really so important to us to be able to listen and learn, identify issues where we might need to be doing better, and just continue to improve our implementation of this critical cleanup. Thank you all for participating, because I believe that all of the feedback we get on these meetings, all of the challenges that you issue to us to do better, help us do better. And I'm very, very grateful for that. Especially, again, I know it takes time and energy at the end of your workday to plug into this conversation. You know, one of the people who has consistently shown up and participated in our discussions is Pete Reyes. He has worked on the Exide cleanup, and I'm pleased to say that he is now joining the advisory group as a member of the advisory group and bringing an important perspective to our conversation. So he's been, practically speaking, a member of the ETAG in some ways, because he has shared his insights consistently over the last years, and really helped us understand and find those places where we can improve. And so now he has a more appropriate seat at the table. And so I want to extend a welcome to Pete Reyes as we start this meeting. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Meredith. Yeah, you know, as is usually the case, tons of things happen between meetings, right? And I think a lot of work really does go unseen between the meetings. And I do definitely want to acknowledge that there's been some transitions, and we're going to talk about that a little later in the DTSE team. And I think, talking to DTSE leadership and knowing that they're working really hard to try to have there be seamless transition. And Exide is just such a huge project that it just always feels like it's slippery. Almost feels like we never have a full grasp on it. And I think, over the last couple of weeks, I spent some time out door knocking with other community members in the Wyvernwood and Estrada Courts communities, and we've really seen a wide range there. I've been able to talk to workers who have a lot of pride in their work, who are happy to be doing this work for their community, who are excited to share how hard they're working to protect our communities. And at the same time, I've talked to residents who aren't informed enough, right, of the threat that the contamination poses. I've seen mud and dust up to doorsteps and know that it's going inside, and talk to residents who don't feel like they know who to talk to when they feel like things are going wrong and complete cleanup isn't happening. And some of the issues that are bound to come up with a project of this size, right? And I think a lot of us put in a lot of energy and a lot of effort to try to ensure that this cleanup happens as best as possible. But unfortunately, there is kind of a consistent flow of issues that come up, right? And we'll be talking about some of that later, but just wanted to make sure to acknowledge that, because I know there's a lot of community members who are joining us tonight who have been part of that process, and who have expressed frustration with how things are going. So hoping that we'll do our best to address some of that tonight, and of course, as always, continue to work through this moving forward, because it isn't just about this one meeting. Much of what's really important to protecting the health of our communities is what happens between these meetings, right? And so we invite you to continue to contribute to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams and Mark Lopez, for your opening remarks. And welcome, Pete Reyes, our newest ETAG member. We will now move into our first set of presentations. Our first presentation will be an Exide project update presented by Mehdi Batahar, Assistant Deputy Director for DTSC. And our second presentation will be a residential cleanup update presented by Pete Rattan, Project Manager for DTSC. Mehdi?
Thank you, Dion, and good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here with you today, and welcome. My name is Mehdi Batahar, and I manage all aspects of the Exide project. I will be presenting a quick recap of our budget history and status of cleanups. I will also quickly present some of the main milestones achieved to date. Slide 10, please. In 2016, Governor Brown approved legislation that directed $176.6 million for DTSC to, one, sample approximately 10,000 properties located within 1.7-mile radius around the former Exide facility. Two is to clean up to 2,500 properties with the highest levels of lead in soil and the greatest potential for exposure. And three, to develop jobs training program, which is known as a DTSC Workforce for Environmental Restoration in Communities, commonly referred to as the WORK program. In 2019, Governor Newsom added another $74.5 million through the Budget Act of 2019 for DTSC to clean up additional properties with the highest level of lead in soil and the greatest potential for exposure. As a summary, as you can see on this slide, the total authorization prior to July 1st, 2021 was $251.1 million. As of November 5th of this year, we have expended about $245.2 million, and we are left with a balance of about $5.9 million. This balance is reserved to cover some of the unforeseen work that needs to be performed on certain properties. Slide 11, please. As the slide shows, about 87% of these funds have been assigned to remove the contaminated soil and restore the properties. Another 8% of these funds have been used for sampling. That gives us 95% of these funds being used or assigned for cleanup, because sampling is part of that cleanup. 4% of the funds have been assigned or used to project quality, the work program, communication, etc., and about 1% are for IT support. Slide 12, please. In July 2nd of 2021 of this year, Governor Newsom approved legislation that directed $322.4 million. And out of this 322.4, 31.4 are being currently used to complete the 3,200 properties by December of 2021. That was a commitment on our end, and I will speak about that here shortly. And 291 million will be used to clean up an additional 2,700 properties with concentrations exceeding 200 parts per million. Also, I needed to share with you that about 230 million are in process of being contracted at this point. That will leave us with a balance of $61 million that will be used later on. Slide 13, please. Now, for the parkways, as of November 5th, 2021, DTSC has expended $2.9 million on contract for sampling and conducting risk assessments. This included about $70,000 on DTSC resources. The balance, as we have reported the last time, the balance of $3.6 million was reverted to general funds to support statewide COVID-19 activities on June 30th, 2020. DTSC has secured additional funds from the lead acid battery cleanup funds to finalize the documents through the public process, and we're working on that as we speak. Slide 14, please. Now, let's move to the general updates. I have also included follow-ups to our previous ETAG meetings. Slide 15, please. So during our last ETAG meeting, we have presented a quick summary of our health and safety protocols. I don't want to miss this opportunity to thank Dr. Rania Sapti for meeting with us, visiting some of the sites, and most importantly, providing us with valuable comments. Rania requested additional documentation, and we have submitted a big number of that documentation. Some is being sent as we speak. And I am hoping that by the time she is done reviewing the documentation, we will schedule other meetings to discuss how best we can collectively identify any needed improvement in the processes we currently have. Slide 16, please. Regarding the former Exide legal action against selected owners, DTSC has published all relevant information in our website, and the link is provided in here. So I think you guys will have access to the links later on if you wish. Briefly, DTSC requested suspension of the litigation deadline for the new property owners that were sued by NL Industry. On September 24th, the court issued an order in favor of this request. However, the length of suspension is not known. Once again, at this point, I would encourage, and I will make sure that our website will capture all new updates, and I encourage everyone who is affected or not, doesn't need to be, but if you need some information, please go to our website and you will find the latest information in there. Slide 17, please. Now, I hope you guys will forgive me, but I will spend a little bit of time on this slide because this is important for us. I would start by saying on October 18, 2021, DTSC was notified about an altercation that took place between two field workers. Because the incident is being investigated by local authorities, I cannot speak about any specific at this time. But I can share that the day following this incident, DTSC met with the unions, that's Local 300, and the contractor. We demanded to know immediate action they took to respond to the incident, including investigating and cooperating in any investigation being conducted by local authorities. We also demanded that they describe the steps they were taking to prevent any further workplace violence, including any bullying or assaults. We made it absolutely clear that there must be consequences for any worker and contractor staff member who commit any workplace violence. Those consequences include being terminated from this project. We also made clear that the union and contractor are responsible for providing a safe workplace on the project designed to protect people from exposure to dangerous level of lead. They must work every single day to make certain that people working on this project are safe. In terms of their immediate response, the contractor and the union confirmed that they were cooperating with the investigation, and the union confirmed they were conducting their own investigation. That same week, a contractor and union organized a workplace violence prevention training that involved all field workers and contractor staff. The contractor also updated the workplace violence policy. I also want to recognize the dedication and professionalism that workers and contractor staff have demonstrated. Over 220 contractor staff and workers, including about 70 people who went through the work program, the overwhelming number of these people are focusing on delivering cleanup for the community. Two last things. We are following up to have conversation with, which will involve unions, the contractor, and community representatives. We have hired a facilitator who is reaching out to all these parties. The goal is to foster open and professional discussions about how to improve communication and prevent any more situation that boil up into any form of violence, bullying, assault, anything. We're also continuing to do more to hold the contractor and unions accountable. We are including new provisions in our contracts that enhance the contractor responsibility for these issues. And we intend to closely track the union's actions to also maintain safe work environments. These new provisions that I am speaking about here will be discussed in our meetings with the unions, contractors, and community representatives in the near future. Near future means upcoming weeks. Any instance of workplace violence is too many. We will continue to work on ways to hold people accountable, enforce consequences, and deliver cleanup in the community. Slide 18, please. Finally, to the main question of the day is, where are we at with the cleanup today? Slide 19, please. I am pleased to share with you today that we have reached major milestones this month, starting with over 3,000 properties that were cleaned up and restored. We have completed also cleanup of all schools, all parks, and 78 out of the 79 daycares that were listed very recently. So the remaining or last daycare is being cleaned up as we speak, and according to our schedule, it will be completed by the end of this week. Slide 20, please. Lastly, we have been tracking our contractor compliance with the Project Labor Agreement, also called PLA. And I'm pleased to report that actuals are currently exceeding the hiring goals established in the PLA. As you can see, the blue chart is the actual, the green is the target. Slide 11, please. As my presentation ends, I will take this opportunity to thank all residents that signed up for the cleanup and welcomed us in their home. Some of these residents have gone as far as encouraging their neighbors to participate in this cleanup effort, and we are very grateful to their kindness and assistance. Many thanks also to all field workers who day after day managed to keep this project going. Their commitment to our mission and their exceptional efforts to serve this community are exemplary, and nothing, absolutely nothing has stopped them from carrying their work. Not COVID-19 that froze our lives for over a year, not the wildfire that affected our air quality in Los Angeles, not the heat of the summer or the cold of the winter. We owe them a great debt of gratitude. And now, without any delay, I will pass it on to my colleague, Peter Rutan, who will be presenting the detail of the residential cleanup. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mehdi, and good evening, everyone. My name is Pete Rutan, and I am the project manager for the Exide Residential Cleanup Project. With the next few slides, I'm going to provide you with a brief update on the residential cleanup that is currently underway. Slide 23, please. So just a real recap here. Here's a map that we have shown everyone before. This shows our preliminary investigation area, which is where our cleanup efforts are taking place. Sometimes I will use the acronym PIA for the preliminary investigation area. I will try not to do that as much as I normally do in my normal conversations, but the preliminary investigation includes these 7 jurisdictions shown here. They include the cities of Commerce, Los Angeles, Maywood, Bell, Huntington Park, and Vernon, and the unincorporated areas or an unincorporated area of Los Angeles, of the County of Los Angeles. Slide 24, please. And again, this is also a slide that most of you have seen before, and so I won't spend a lot of time on it. It basically shows our 5-step process for the cleanup, beginning with a notification letter to the property owner that their property does qualify for the cleanup. Then we move on to the planning phase of the cleanup by communicating directly with the property owner at least twice before the actual cleanup starts. These are usually the initial meeting and a pre-construction meeting. Once we do that, then we of course move into the actual cleanup process or the physical cleanup efforts. And once we're done with those cleanup efforts and they're all complete, all the documentation then is compiled into a report, which we refer to as a letter of completion. Slide 25, please. So now I'd like to talk briefly a little bit about the sampling process for the residential properties. With the next couple of slides, I will address our sampling efforts, including the initial sampling of the property and our pre-confirmation sampling. Slide 26. So on this slide, you will see I've got a generic depiction of a property on the right. It includes the basics of the residential properties, including a house, a front yard, a backyard, side yard, and a driveway. The samples are collected from, these are on the initial sampling, that samples are collected from 8 locations typically on a property. And these are typically from 3 locations in the front yard, 3 in the backyard, 2 near the structure. The locations near the structures are commonly called drip line sample, but sometimes the drip line samples can be substituted for other locations on the property, say a child play area, or perhaps when a field inspector goes out and finds evidence that maybe some water was collected, such as near a downspout or in a low-lying area on the property, they'll collect sample there. Approximately 20 soil samples are collected from the depths ranging from 0 to 6 inches, 6 to 12 inches, and 12 to 18 inches. And 2 of those 20 samples we identify as duplicate samples, and they are also analyzed as part of our data validation. The soil samples are analyzed using the EPA method 6010 for metals. In addition to the soil sampling, we also do what we call a lead-based paint screening. This is done with X-ray fluorescent scans. It's also identified as XRF. The X-ray fluorescent scan measures the amount of lead in the paint on the structure. And the results of the scan specifically are looking at to see if it exceeds 0.7 milligrams per square centimeter. If it exceeds this value, then it is identified as lead-based paint. Slide 27, please. So before any of the work begins, once we've identified that the property qualifies for cleanup and the property owner has provided access for that cleanup, we want to establish the depths of the excavation that will be needed for a particular property. So we collect samples from 8 sample locations. These are not from the same locations from the initial sampling event that I spoke about earlier. Typically, we gather these samples 4 from the front yard and 4 from the rear yard, but this schematic may change based on the conditions of the property. There could be very little backyard, more front yard, or vice versa, and we will change the locations appropriately based on the property. 2 discrete soil samples are also collected at each of those locations at 12 to 15 inches, and that basically will represent the bottom of a 0 to 12 inch excavation, or we'll collect another samples from 18 to 21 inches, which represents the bottom of a 0 to 18 inch excavation. And again, these samples are also analyzed with approved EPA methods. We also want to know basically what type of landfill will accept the soils that we're excavating. So what we also do is perform what we call a waste profile sampling by compositing soils from depths ranging from 0 to 12 inches and 0 to 18 inches. This is done so the landfill can accept waste. They must verify that they can accept this waste to meet their permit requirements. So we analyze the composited soil samples for metals, petroleum hydrocarbons, and volatile organic compounds, again, using approved EPA methods. Slide 28, thank you. So now I'm going to transition and provide a brief update on the residential cleanup that is currently underway. Most of our efforts are now focused on 2 large apartment complexes, the Wyverwood Garden apartment complex and the Estrada Courts apartment complex. Slide 29. The Wyverwood Garden Apartments is an approximate 63-acre site located south of the Interstate 5, Interstate 10, and US Route 60 interchange. This site consists of 6 very large parcels that are identified here as blocks 1 through 6. These parcels include a total of 333 decision units that have qualified for cleanup. These decision units consist mostly of land immediately surrounding the individual buildings. but they can also include very large grassy areas. There's some fenced-in yards, and of course, there's shared community areas. The pre-confirmation sampling of the Wyvern Wood Garden apartments was completed on July 30th, and the actual cleanup work began on August 17th. And right now, work is happening currently on all 6 blocks. As of the November 5th, 2021, approximately 141 decision units in the Wyvern Wood Gardens had been cleaned up. Slide 30, please. This is the Estrada Courts apartment complex. It's 2 parcels that total approximately 21 acres. And it's located just east of the Wyvern Wood Garden apartment complex. This site consists, again, of 2 large parcels that we've identified here as blocks 1 and block 2. Our initial sampling identified 69 decision units within the Estrada Courts that do qualify for cleanup. These decision units consist of lands also immediately surrounding the apartment buildings, but also can include common areas, and there are areas that surround an on-site school and a daycare center. The pre-construction confirmation sampling was completed on August 13th, 2021, and the actual work began on October 5th. And as of this November 5th, 6 decision units have been cleaned up. And so our goal is to finish and clean up and restore the Wyvern Wood and Estrada Courts properties by the end of this year. Next slide, please. Slide 31. So as far as the residential cleanup progress goes, the preliminary investigation area includes just over 10,000 sensitive land use parcels, including single family and multifamily residential properties, schools, parks, daycares, childcare facilities. In cases such as the large Wyvern Wood Garden and Estrada Courts properties, we've subdivided those, as I said earlier, into what we call individual decision units. And as of November 5th, 2021, there's approximately 3,049 parcels have been cleaned up. 8,647 parcels have been sampled, and there are just over about 1,500 parcels in the preliminary investigation area that have not been sampled. DTSC, we typically reach out to a property owner about 7 times, but if a property owner has been previously reluctant to participate, should re-engage with DTSC and request that the sampling and cleanup begin, we will get it. We will go out and do that. Slide 32, please. This again is a graph that we've shown in the past, and it kind of shows our progress that beginning of May of 2018 through November 5th of this year. The solid blue line that you see on this graph shows basically our steady progress of cleaning up properties. We're up in the very far right-hand corner. As you can see, there's a small little area of a purple dotted line that shows our projected number to be cleaned up by the end of this year. And we spoke about this in the past. Down at the middle bottom of this graph, you'll see 2 small red bars. They basically show where we've had a little dip in our progress, and that's mainly due because of the pandemic from COVID-19. And of course, after that, during the summer, we had a lot of excessive smoke in the valley and from the nearby wildfires. And so we purposely slowed down work because of our concern for the health and safety of the workers out working in the area. Slide 33, thank you. So there's a table that provides our cleanup efforts for the schools and parks and daycares. As you can see here, 31 schools, 16 parks, and 79 daycares were identified in the PAA. And as Dr. Bedahar said earlier, he mentioned that all the schools and parks have been addressed and none remain to be clean. And of the 79 daycares, again, only one daycare remains to be cleaned up, and that is expected to be completed by the end of this week, tomorrow. So very good news on that front. I'm sorry, next slide, please. 34. Yeah, thank you. We're also actively trying to build up a backlog of the properties for the cleanup so that the work can continue into 2022 and beyond. We're committed to addressing all the contaminated soils for those residential properties that qualify for the cleanup. Recently, we've sent out 2,089 notifications to property owners with lead concentrations that are over 200 parts per million to let them know that their properties qualify for cleanup. And of those, we've actually received 837 access agreements. Also, our desire is to have all of the properties in the preliminary investigation area sampled. And as of November 5th, of the approximate 1,500 properties that had not had the initial sampling, we've been able to secure 62 access agreements. And of those, we have already done the initial sampling of 43 of those properties. Slide 35, please. So this concludes my presentation. If you'd like more information, you can contact our public participation specialist, Ms. Dion Falk, or myself at the phone numbers and the email addresses listed here. You can also find, we've been providing this link several times, a lot of information on our residential cleanup at the website shown here. I've said this before, easy to just go to Google and type in DTSC Exide, and it's almost the first thing that shows up on the search. Thank you all very much. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you so much. Slide 36, please. Thank you again, Mehdi Batahar and Pete Rattan, for your presentations. We appreciate you. We'd like to take this opportunity to transition to our ETAG members for questions and comments at this time. So if you're an ETAG member, why don't you go ahead and raise your hand and use the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen so our team members can identify you. And we will allow you to go ahead and start asking your questions. Okay. And I see that our co-chair, Mark Lopez, has a question. So Mark, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question or make your comment.
Yeah, thank you, Dion.
You're welcome.
I did have a question, but first I wanted to actually open up the space for Pete to introduce himself. I realized that we introduced him, but didn't allow him to introduce himself. So I wanted to open up that space for Pete to do that. And then I had a question.
Sure.
Yes. First, I just want to say it's an honor and I feel privileged. I definitely want to say thank you to all the generations that fought for this to be where we're at. I want to thank Mark, Easyards, the community, and Dr. Rania. Just a quick synopsis of how I got here is I've been laid off 3 times from 3 different contractors, and the common denominator in all of them was workforce participants being targeted. Whatever the reasons were, whatever the cause was, it always seems to be workforce participants being targeted. And I feel that it was time to speak up. I can only imagine, and better yet, I know what it is or what's going on because I still have workforce participants contact me, even laborers from the project contacting me in regards to stuff that's going on. With that said, I think it's important to understand that we're not here to, and I say we because I include Mark and Dr. Rania and all of us trying to fight for this, is we're not here to nitpick or create drama or create problems, but we definitely want transparency and we definitely want things done right. But when we see that the contractor goes around and does stuff that we've witnessed, we've seen, we hear, then I think that's a time that we start speaking up. And at this point, it's where we've reached a point where we say, we can't no more, we can't work with this contractor and we need to move on. The last layoff that I had, it was from, I was given my last check from the brother of the owner of the company, telling me that this was my last check because I spoke up in regards to doing stuff wrong or it was being done wrong. And that's the kind of stuff that that I've experienced, and it's made me speak up and gotten to the point where I'm at. But I think it's important to understand that we do want to work together if the opportunity is given. But unfortunately, right now with this contractor, it's a track record that this is impossible. So with that said, I just want to say thank you to everyone. Definitely appreciate everyone. Meredith, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And with that, I appreciate everything, and I'm sure we'll have more to say as the meeting goes on.
Thank you, Pete. So my question was to something that the other Pete shared, which was about the homes that previously weren't in the kind of priority above 400, but are now in the priority because they're above 200. What the timeline is, if you could break down the timeline for us as far as from like a community member perspective. I was talking to one of our members today who said that they submitted the paperwork, right, the access agreement, but haven't heard back as far as when there will be a cleanup, right? And I know we're talking about over 2,000 homes, and so starting the kind of prioritization process it takes time, but of course I think it's important to communicate that to residents, because when I talked to our member earlier today, he felt like he was kind of left in the air and wasn't really sure when he would hear back. And so I'm wondering if you can kind of explain the timeline. Like, I'm a resident, I submit my, I got tested a while back, been waiting, submitted a new access agreement form. When am I going to hear back?
Yeah, I'll take a first stab at the answer, Mark. Thank you so much. That's a very good question. And I know that in the presentation that Pete has started with, there was a timeline. This time we didn't go into the detail of the timeline, but let me recap very quick of where we are today. Out of the list of about 2,100 properties that we opened by lowering that concentration to 200 parts per million, we have received about 800 and some, 840, I believe the number is, or close. And those are being contacted as we speak, and we have increased the frequency of sampling. So we're not waiting, we are reaching out to people as quickly as possible. I can tell you that right now, we are sampling about 40 properties a week. That gives you about 160 a month. So that's a very high frequency. And we don't want to delay. We are actually, as soon as we finish the work that we are doing in Winewood and Hakla, which is hopefully mid-January or so, we're going to be moving into the residential right away with the 30 crews. We don't want to change that number. We want to keep the 30 crews fully employed. And I can tell you that we're not going to have any pause, right? We're going to move from one to the other. And every person who sent an access agreement is going to be contacted. So if Pete wants to go very quickly on the timeline, because he has that nice slide, he would show you exactly how it starts from the moment we have the access agreement to the moment they get the property gets included into the cleanup. Pete, do you want to present that slide, please?
Yeah, it would be, I'm not sure which slide number it was now. It was probably somewhere, I think if somebody that's got the screen going here can go up. And not, there, one couple more. There we go. So yeah, this Mark, basically the bottom line on this one is I think your main question is, when do we get up to the initial meeting with the owner? And Mehdi was basically saying that, yes, we're actively trying to do that and get out and sample. Once we have that initial sampling data, together and it has the property does qualify for cleanup, then we send out a notification letter to the owner. As far as a timeline, a general timeline is typically it takes about 3 months from start to completion. So it's about a 3-month process. We send a notification letter out, we try to communicate with the property owner, and then we set up that public meeting. And then, of course, there's a lot of planning that goes involved between the initial meeting and the pre-construction meeting. Those are usually where we talk with the property owner about restoration options, the relocation needs of the property owner, if they want interior cleaning done, and anything that might happen on the property where there's some a need for a removal of materials. But basically, the final line is once we are out of the property, we've seen it, then we'll do the final plans. But generally, it's about a 3-month process. It could take a little longer. It could take shorter, depending on the issues at a property and how large the property is.
And one small caveat, Mark, and I'm sorry, I know you wanted to say something, but one small caveat. Your message was well received, and we are guests in this home, so we work with these owners day in, day out to make sure that we're accommodating their schedule as well. So it's not just our schedule that's shooting for about 3 to 4 months. It's also the availability of the owner and their willingness to open their door and let us get in as soon as possible.
Yeah, of course. I think I appreciate that this slide was brought back up, because I think it's really the time that I'm asking about is between the notification letter and the initial meeting, right? And so I hear there's a little over 800 homes that have already responded, and so that's a good amount to process through, right? And so it's understandable that residents aren't going to get an initial meeting the next week, right? That's reasonable. But I think just being able to communicate some sense of time, right? And so if about 150 properties are kind of reaching the initial meeting and confirmation sampling a month, if we have a little bit over 800, then it would be safe to communicate back to a resident that's reached out to me that it could be this month, it could be between now and the next, let's say 6 months, you're gonna get followed up with, right? Just so that way residents have already been waiting for years, right? And so that isn't new, but just to be able to give them a sense of time, that this isn't just an ongoing wait, but it is kind of and I guess this is something to confirm, it is being processed initially, at least as a first come, first serve kind of basis. And so the earlier you respond to the notification letter, the higher up you'll be in the queue for getting an initial meeting and the confirmation sampling. Would that be correct to communicate that out?
Yeah, your point is well taken, Mark. I think that's a very, very good point, and we're going to follow up on that one.
Thank you both so much. Mark, we appreciate your comments and your questions always. And so in the interest of time, I'm going to jump to some of our other ETAG members because we want to give everybody an opportunity to ask a question. Before I do, I want to ask the ETAG members to just kind of be very succinct in your question or comments, because we do have some additional presentations. And I just want us to be mindful of everybody's time, and hopefully we can end on time at 7:30. And at this time, I want to ask Jim Wells to unmute and go ahead. You have the floor, Mr. Wells.
Okay, thanks so much. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jim Wells. I'm the state-appointed technical advisor for ETAG. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an environmental scientist who've been working on cleanup sites for many decades, I guess. I just want to remind folks that I'm here ideally to serve as a resource for ETAG members with their technical questions or concerns. As Mark mentioned in his opening remarks, there's an awful lot that goes on in between these meetings. So I just want everybody to know that you're more than welcome to reach out to me anytime if you have technical questions or concerns that I might be able to help out with. And I don't know if it might make sense to publish in the chat my email and phone number. It may or may not be something that people have readily available. I'd be happy to do that. I don't know if I have the power to do that. Anyway, you can fill me in on that later. Quick question. I think this probably goes to Pete. Regarding the check using XRF for lead-based paint at homes that are subject to cleanup, could Pete or someone else from DTSC, could you comment on what sort of follow-up, if any, is performed if and when you identify lead-based paint at a home? And also, if there is any kind of change in the way the soil cleanup is performed if you identify lead-based paint at a particular parcel. And that's all I got for now. Thank you.
Jim, thank you, Dr. Wells. I'm sorry, Dr. Wells, for the question. The lead results are provided to the property owner, and we do let them know that the paint sample does qualify as lead-based paint when we send them the initial sampling report, and we let them know that in the letter. As far as if we change, we don't change our cleanup approach based on the fact that there's lead-based paint in the paint on the structure. We still go with the representative soil concentrations to determine whether or not the property qualifies for cleanup with lead over 200. And that still is performed in the cleanup. Lead-based paint really only, we know it only basically affects that area that's closest to the structure if it's there indeed. So it does not affect our cleanup or how we clean up a property.
Thank you so much, Pete. Dr. Wells, appreciate you. And now I want to go to our ETAG member, Rania Sapti. You have the floor, Rania. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello. Just wanted to welcome Pete Reyes to the ETAG and to say thank you for all that you've done earlier and in the past to bring issues up to the board or to the advisory group and to inform us all. And just as you said, I also echo what you said in that the idea is not to be antagonistic or, I'm very grateful for what DTSC is doing. I also am aware that there are perspectives out there, and to hear them all and to have an opportunity or a place for us to hear your perspectives, Pete, and the workers' perspectives, which, you may be aware of and others not, will be valuable and have been before and will continue to be. So welcome aboard. And also, I just quickly want to thank DTSC and particularly Mr. Batahar for following through with my request for, information in the, under the Public Records Act. I will tackle those things in a while. I haven't quite yet. It's a busy time of the semester for us, and I will get to it. I just want to say I'm acknowledging receipt of them. I appreciate it, and we will get to work on looking at them and see what we can bring back to ETAG and DTSC that might be helpful or informative to the workers or informative to the community. So thank you, and appreciate the kind words that you all expressed. It's we just all bring different perspectives, and that's what I also do. So I thank you for giving me that opportunity. That's all.
Thank you, Rania. Appreciate you. Okay, before we go to our public members, I want to just make an announcement that our chat feature is operational. We are providing information to our public members, their direct links, phone numbers, and informational type of items that are posted there. So we do have the chat open, but we're trying to provide our public members with information like our hotline number, our website where they can access the PowerPoint presentation and other items like that. So I just want everybody to be aware. And if you're looking for any information, you can go to the chat for that information. So now we will transition to our public members for questions and comments. There are 3 ways that our public members can make a comment here today. If you're participating on the Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen, and you will be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn to speak. If you're on your phone, you can press *9 to join the phone queue. I will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn to speak. You can then press *6 to unmute your line. If you would like to use the Q&A feature, click the tab at the bottom of your screen and type your comment. So now I will go ahead and start taking your questions and comments. And I will look in see if we have any raised hands. I don't see any this time. So at this time, I'm going to check the Q&A. And I do see that it looks like Tiffany Sanchez has asked a question in our Q&A. So her question is, I would like to know who from DTSC is on this call Zoom meeting. And so we have a lot of DTSC staff here. It takes a lot to put on this public meeting. And I'm happy to provide that maybe after this public meeting, but I don't want to miss anybody. So, but we do have several members of the DTSC staff here. And so she also asked, let me see, I would like to know why any information on the worksite fences aren't translated in Spanish in the 80% Spanish Mongol community. So I would like to know why any information on the worksite fences aren't translated in Spanish. And so I will take a stab. We do, and I'll invite other members from DTSC to join in if they'd like to, but we do, Tiffany, do try and translate all of our documents. I think most of them are translated at this time. So there is an effort. If there's some document or two that has not been translated, then we will definitely work on getting that document translated as well. And then
Tiffany, if I can jump in, I think
yes, you are free to go ahead.
What Tiff is referring to specifically is there's these large white signs that are probably a good 4 feet by 3 feet that have DTSC's information and a brief statement on the work that's taking place.
Oh.
So it's the largest sign because we've seen the postings, right, that have like green kind of work notice in English and Spanish. Mm-hmm. But these large signs, which are the most visible, are only in English. And I think there's a lot of things that take a lot of time to process and address. This is one of those things that can be done overnight, right? Just printing up another large sign, but in Spanish. So I think if that's an action item that somebody from the DTSC side could follow up on, that'd be great.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate that insight, that additional information. Okay, and it looks like Joe Santana has posted a question in our Q&A. And his question is, what is his name of the cleaning contractors allegedly involved with the workers' violent incident? Also, can you name all the cleaning contractors currently hired by DTSC in the Exide Community Cleaning Project? And I'll allow Maddie to go ahead and answer the question regarding the incident.
Yeah, well, currently we only have one contractor in multiple subcontractors. So the main contractor that we have, the cleanup contractor, is National Engineering Group. That's NEC, National Engineering and Consulting Group. My apologies. So NEC is the contractor, and they have at least 2 subcontractors I'm aware of, and that's AIS, American Integrated Services, and the second is SFNF, sorry. And those are the main contractor, I would call it yellow equipment in the field right now.
Thank you so much, Medi. And then we have one other question in our Q&A feature. And the question is, DTSC, please be aware that the blank area usually reserved for the audience to type in questions or comments in the chat is displaying the message chat disabled. When this message is being displayed, members of the public cannot copy or download the information presented in the chat from DTSC or other presenters. So I think that she is wanting our chat to be disabled. We do have our chat feature, my understanding is operational, but we're using it, Yvonne, to provide information. So what we're trying to do is put the post the links for our PowerPoint presentation and for the Spanish translation line and those type of informational items, just so that people that are just signing on are able to access the information they need to sign on. So, and then what I want to do now is I'm going to transition to our Spanish bridge. I am going to ask my colleague, Teresa Garcia, if she can check in with our Spanish bridge line and see if we have any questions or comments from our Spanish bridge line. Teresa, I'm going to allow an opportunity for her.
There are no questions at this time.
Okay, thank you so much, Teresa. Appreciate you. And so I'm looking, I don't see any more raised hands. And I'm sorry?
There is.
Oh, there is? Okay, let me see. I'm not seeing it. Let me go ahead and go.
Well, while you're looking, Dion, very quickly, and I want Mark to leave with the sense that I'm sorry, I'm putting my head down, I'm taking notes, and I will follow up on some of the items, including the sign. I don't want you to feel that I'm brushing it off. I'll make sure that I will personally follow up on that item. It's important.
Thank you so much for that, Medi. Okay, and I see, I'm gonna go to the raise hand feature, and I see Jenica Robles. And so I hope that I pronounced your name properly, Jenica. Why don't you go ahead and unmute if you can and ask your question?
Hi, yeah, thank you. You pronounced it properly, so thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, so good evening. My name is Jenica Robles. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator with Impact Assessment. Impact Assessment is partnering with the Lead-Free Homes LA program to carry out outreach and engagement activities with community partners. So I'm here tonight to learn more about the Exide cleanup process and hear from other organizations, and I'm hoping to make some connections and with organizations that are interested in doing some outreach and engagement with us to help us get the word out about the program. Secondly, aside from the Lead-Free Homes LA program, Impact Assessment will be carrying out lead poisoning prevention awareness and education activities throughout the County of LA with funding through the CDC. So that's going to hopefully kind of fill in those gaps of providing people with the education when someone maybe doesn't qualify for the program and yet they still have young children in their home. So things like that, like we'll be doing fact sheets and brochures, things like that. So again, I'm here to introduce myself and hopefully make some connections with anyone that's interested in collaborating with us to carry out those activities to your communities. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenica. We appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And
I can drop my information
follow
in the
up
chat.
with you and so we can provide that information to our community members. Thank you. You're welcome. And I want to go to our next hand raised. And it's spelled I-D-A-L-M-I-S, Idelmis, I believe. So if you can go ahead and unmute your phone, you have the floor. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go right ahead.
Thank you. My question is regarding the Strata Courts cleanup. My mother lives there, and when visiting her, I noticed that there's a lot of the places where DTSC has already cleaned up. There's still the cleanup crews have added sand to the top of the of the ground. And so once the soil is cleaned up, they put sand. And so I was wondering if they're gonna, you know, put soil instead, because a lot of my mother and other residents use that soil for like to plant flowers and vegetables. And just, I saw that the sand quality isn't quality for growing anything on the floor. And so I just wanted to ask whether there's any, like who authorized this, and whether, you know, there's any plans by DTSC to make sure that there's good soil for folks to use.
Can we, Dion, is there a way we can take the address of the person who is asking us to do something? Because I would like to follow up on this. Is it possible? Because I don't have the address. Is this a private home, or is it part of the Winewood and High Club?
It's part of Estrada Courts. It's by it's on block number 2 of the blocks that you guys have been working on.
Okay.
And it's on, but if you want the apartment number, it's like around the 300s. And
Yeah, no, I can follow up directly. And here's what I wanted to share with all of you is we do have a mobile information center that is on both Estrada Court and Winewood. I think they have alternate dates, and Dion may be able to, or someone at public participation may be able to share the dates. But we do have people who are permanently there to answer questions. And I do appreciate the feedback, because I'm taking notes, and I'll follow up on that personally as well.
Okay, thank you. Who do I give my information to so I can get follow-up?
Dion?
Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay, so what we can do is, if you're able to, do you want to go ahead and post your email in the Q&A feature? And then one of our team members will get it, and we can follow up with you tomorrow, if you don't mind doing that.
Sure, thank you.
Oh, no problem. And then now I'd like to go to Tiff Sanchez. Tiff, you can go ahead and unmute your line, and you have the floor.
Hi, thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right, sorry, Ruth. Before you go, thank you. I just want to make sure there was somebody who was unmuted.
Okay.
Hi, yes,
Hi,
thank you
Tiff.
so much.
I'm sorry about that. We wanted to make sure we heard your question, and somebody else was off mute.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yes, so I would just like to take this moment to say that if you leave the chat on, people can copy and paste. Right now, nobody is able to copy or paste any of the links that you're sending out. If they know how to do screenshots or something like that, then they can. So I believe Zoom allows you to see all the email addresses that people are participating in. So I think all these links would be helpful if you all just emailed them to folks and allowed folks to, especially people from the community, to be able to share their concerns publicly without having their questions fielded. And then also, so that way they could understand that other people from the community are participating in these meetings. As I'm aware of right now, there's already low participation from the community, and that is just a reflection of DTSC's lack of transparency with the community. I also wanted to ask you, what percentage of the Wyvernwood and Estrada Courts residences are taking you up on the relocation, the temporary relocation at motels? I would be interested to know that, because I have actually door knocked at Wyvernwood and at Estrada Courts. And if you've actually been on the ground there and walked through that area, you're aware that those are two separate housing complexes. So for the gentleman, Medi, that didn't know where Estrada Courts was in the cleanup, I would highly recommend you to take a stroll there and see what's going on. At Wyvernwood, for example, in August, I had residences that, and by the way, I'm an East Yard youth organizer for the East Side. So I actually am an East Yard team member, and I have youth members that actually live in Estrada Courts and at Wyvernwood. And I would like for you all to know that the community are taking pictures of the cleanup and of the construction workers, and the lack of PPE that they are wearing, the lack of resources that the community members are being given, such as shoe coverings, so that way they don't track dust and debris into their homes. My concern is primarily of the slow pace of the cleanup sites being actually covered up with something. In August, the removal of the grass has started. We are now in November, and it is literally a dust bowl there. All walkways are covered in dust. There was DTSC is aware of it because I had spoken with other folks from DTSC that there was a water line that had burst. Lots of soil, lots of water runoff was all over the parking areas and the walkways. What we want, what the community is asking for is for safety. We're talking about lead. There is no safe level of lead in anybody's bodies. When it's entered into the homes, it stays there forever. There's no railing, there's no guarding the dust from coming into people's homes. I've personally door knocked and seen trails of dust inside their front doors leading into their living rooms. I am concerned that DTSC doesn't know what's going on in those areas. And I also want to point out that this mobile information center is not part of DTSC. It is from the contractors. I found out through a second party that that was the case. They are not there an hours that that is suitable for residents there. Residents there work twice. They work double shifts. They're rarely there in the evening. They're definitely not there during the daytime. What we have asked for is for that information center to be there on Saturdays and Sundays when people actually have the day off for the most part and are able to ask people those questions at that mobile site center. So I really implore you to use transparency when talking about these things, because right now, the fact that the chat isn't even available to use is very disrespectful to the community, and it's censorship. I don't have anything else to say to that.
Okay, thank you so much, Tiff. We appreciate your comments. I do want to see if Mehdi or Pete wanted to address some of your concerns. So I'm going to open the floor up to them to see if they want to address some of your concerns.
And thank you, Tiffany. We really appreciate the fact that you're helping the community and providing us with that feedback is actually very important for us. Note that unfortunately, I don't have as often the chance to go to the site, but I've made it a point and I have visited both Winewood and Hakla at least every 3 to 4 weeks. But that's not enough. As you pointed out, I need myself to make sure that I have a chance to visit these sites more often. So to sum up the questions, I do agree on the safety. Safety is paramount. Safety is everybody's issue. It's not just the workers or the people who live in this community. It is also our concern, and we want to make sure that everybody is safe. So far, I think all the areas are being excavated are clearly delineated by fencing, and we have a different type of fences that we are using. So people, at least AQMD, who is inspecting also this site, is not confused. So when you see high fences of 6 foot and above, that means the area is closed, and that means the remediation is happening. Once these fences are out, they put snow fencing, which is very short fence, that's orange. It means the area has been now cleared, it is clean, and it's ready to be backfilled. And that's what we're using. And we will do a better job in the future communicating that with the owners. As far as the water lines that are bursting, this is not a new problem. When we stepped in on these two properties, the first thing we were told is be careful because those lines are very, very old. And we have made sure that we delineated the miles long of pipe that are there. And we actually pointed out of the lines that were already leaking before we even started the work. So we are working with the owner of these properties hand in hand to make sure that the community does not get affected, whether through the work we do or even outside. We're pointing at these leaks before we even step in. That's in a nutshell what I wanted to share with you, but I will again thank you for providing us with the feedback.
And I wanted to see if Pete Raton had any comments or wanted to address Tiff's concerns.
No, I think Mehdi has adequately addressed those concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Tiff, for your comments. We appreciate it, and you know, we can always follow up later if all of your concerns or questions were not answered. We're happy to follow up with you later after this meeting.
I did want to step in, Dion, just I think on two things. One, you know, Mehdi, you mentioned the areas that are cleaned up that have the orange fencing. And something we've seen when we've been out there door knocking is actually children playing in those areas, right? Especially on the weekends, right? They access the areas. And so you described it as being clean. And it reminded me that I was concerned about, is it actually tested at that depth, right? Because I think the 18-inch level depth was kind of like, we would anticipate that people are not accessing soil below this depth. That's why it's going that far. And so my concern is if at that depth that's awaiting being refilled, that might still be contaminated soil, but it's deep enough that it's not necessarily an issue because it's lead, it's not a volatile organic compound, right? But in the meantime, while it's being in waiting to be refilled, children are playing in there. And so I would assume that we would want to treat that as if it is contaminated soil, especially if we don't know. And so I'm wondering if that is something that could be adjusted in the way it's fenced off so that it's not as accessible, or even if there's a warning that might be contaminated, we really don't know, or if we want to do additional sampling, especially if it's going to be left uncovered for an extended period of time. So maybe we can follow up on that. And then I did want to go back to Tiff's comment about the opportunity for hotel or motel housing while cleanup was happening. I think in the door knocking that I've participated in, I've found 0 people who were aware that was an option. And so can you all confirm that is an option for the residents at both Wyvernwood and Estrada courts, and what we might be able to do to address this issue where residents aren't aware that this is an option? It might just be a gap in communication from the contractor or something.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, Mark. So what I would recommend here is fortunately, we have tracked the number of times we have reached out to each resident. So keep in mind for Estrada Courts has 2 blocks, Wyvernwood has 8 blocks. Wyvernwood, the lot is about 70 acre. And we started the work very early on. Before the work started, we had people boot on the ground, knocking at doors and informing them. This is not just about passing on some type of note saying, here it is, we're going to be here in a few weeks. They knocked at the door and we have documented all of that. So if you wish, as part of our answer to this meeting, we can provide those numbers for you. So you get a sense of how many times we have tried, how many people we have reached out to, how many people accepted the hotel relocation. And in simple words, to your question is it still an option? The answer is yes, it is. And it has been actually offered to every resident who is willing to relocate. And we have, I would say at this point, maybe a dozen or 2. I don't have that number. I would rather wait until we provide you with the real number because we have been tracking all of that.
Yeah, thank you. That would give us insight into the effectiveness of the outreach, in particular for that option. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate that. And I am going to now go to Ryan, and then I'm going to transition back to our Spanish Bridge line and see if we have any questions. Ryan, you are free to go ahead and unmute and ask your question at this time.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ryan. Go right ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment. My name is Ryan. I also volunteered with East Yard Communities at the Wyvernwood Apartments door knocking. And again, to what Tiff was saying earlier, there was a water line that burst there and the parking lot was full of dirt. So The workers were no longer there, and so it appears to me they left the parking lot in that condition. It's interesting to just find out about the information booth being the contractor. I thought it would be somebody from DTLC, but it seems like that parking lot was left contaminated, and I could see people coming up, parking, and just walking through the contaminated area. So just, I guess, again, to find out about quality control, and if there could be somebody who would be more accountable than the contractor to handle those types of accidents in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for your comment. I'm going to see if Mehdi or Pete Raton want to.
As a quick answer, I would say that we are, believe me when I say we are coordinating with the owners. It is, in most of the construction, you look at the risk, but in this particular, these two properties, the lines are very, very old. And if some lines are leaking without even our presence. I will repeat myself by saying that we have walked the property entirely with two owners. We have identified these leaks early on so that the owner knows that there is a need to fix them right away. And we're working with them. If there is a leak, usually we inform the owner right away. If the contractor is responsible for any damage, the contractor acts on it right away. But if we're talking about the same event here, this was outside our control or outside the contractor control. This was an old pipe and one that was pre-existing that has nothing to do with the construction. And we continue to work with both owners to make sure that that doesn't happen, because regardless of whether we cause it or not, we see something, we say something, and we want to make sure that the community is not affected by water shortage.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry if I can jump in here.
Sure.
You know, the way Ryan framed it, right, of like incidents reporting, I think there's an opportunity here for considering when an incident does happen, right, how are residents informed? I think there's standard protocols for a cleanup going to plan, but what happens when the cleanup doesn't go to plan, right? When there is an issue, when there is fugitive dust, when there is runoff, right? These things that can happen at a work site. I think it would be good to follow up to consider how that might be addressed, and then how other residents might be informed, right? Because I think Ryan described the parking lot being flooded and having some of the soil, potentially contaminated soil, and people are walking through it. Residents might be like, oh, as you mentioned, many right pre-existing issues, it's always dripping right here. It's always wet right here, right? But maybe aren't making the connection that this is contaminated soil flowing with the water, and now they're tracking that into their home. So I think something to consider of what do the kind of communication protocols look like when things don't go to plan.
Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so now really quickly, I want to transition and see if we have any questions or comments on our Spanish Bridge. My colleague, Teresa, can you please check and see if we have any questions?
No questions at this time, Dion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me check the Q&A. Hold on. Tiff Sanchez has one more question. Tiff, go ahead and unmute. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to go ahead and say that the soil that has been removed or remediated, it's only 18 inches of the topsoil, right? And so what I ask all of the DTSE members here is, knowing how big this cleanup is and how big Wyvernwood is, and if you've been there, you've seen the yards start at their doorstep. There is no fencing in between. It's right up against their units, their apartments. And so seeing that, and seeing that there hasn't been anything to cover up this raw dirt, and now that it's just dirt, it's dust, really, how comfortable would you be if your children lived there and they were riding their tricycles through this dust, through this dirt, right? How comfortable would you be? Because I walk through there and my heart sinks when I see that, because I would not let my kids play in that dirt. And I don't think that DTSC or the cleanup crews have done enough to ensure safety to the residents of Wyvernwood or Estrada Courts. I don't think this forum is respectful to the residents of Wyvernwood, to the residents of Estrada Courts, because of the lack of transparency with this chat. All of those links that you all are providing in the chat, they actually work if you allow people to participate on that chat live. It does, promise. It actually works better when you allow other people to participate on that chat live, because then they can tell you, hey, I can't click on this link. Right now we have to resort to this Q&A. I can't even see, for the most part, any of the questions that residents are actually asking. And it's extremely frustrating. I'm literally biting the insides of my cheeks as I speak because I'm trying not to curse. So with that being said, I would like for a direct answer, whether or not we have another one of these meetings, that you will allow us to have the chat on live. The links, the phone numbers, the names, they all work if you leave the chat on and allow people to actually participate actively in these meetings. Otherwise, you all are just checking off a little box at the end of the day saying, yep, we put that meeting together. We did our job. Yep, that's all we were supposed to do. Cool, we can check that little box off. It's very disrespectful.
Okay, thank you so much, Tiff Sanchez. We appreciate your comments, and our team is, I am the facilitator, but I will see if we can get the chat turned on. That is not our desire to frustrate any of the community members that took the time to sign in here this evening. So hopefully we will be able to get the chat, to enable the chat, okay? At this time, in the interest of time, I am going to move forward with our next set of presentations. I do want to thank all of our ETAG members and community members for the questions and comments. And so we will now move forward with our Exide closure facility presentations. First up is Amanda Cruz, project manager with the US EPA. And then we will go to Roberto Puga with the Vernon Environmental Response Trust, also known as VERT. And finally, we will have our last presentation this evening by Jason Espel, Deputy Executive Officer with South Coast Air Quality Management District, also known as South Coast AQMD. So at this time, we're going to start our Exide closure facility presentations, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Amanda.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm going to start on slide 38 now. And I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight and for your time to work together on this project. As was mentioned, my name is Amanda Cruz, and I am honored to be here tonight on behalf of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. We're here tonight to provide an overview of the facility progress that is being done by the trust. EPA oversees the work of the trust, and we are working collaboratively with DTSC, and DTSC does continue to be a key decision maker for the facility work. As discussed in previous meetings, the purpose of the trust is to decontaminate and to deconstruct the buildings at the former Exide facility in a way that will protect the surrounding community. I'm gonna go to slide 39, please. So this is the overall timeline that was recently updated. This updated timeline does account for the shutdown that we discussed previously in the July meeting. As you can see, the work that was anticipated previously to end in December 2021 is now scheduled to go until May. And after that point in time, the trust will be funded for site controls to continue into the future. The three main categories of work as shown here are deconstruction and decontamination, the boarding up of some buildings, and then also the operation and maintenance. Some recent great progress that we've done is that the trust finished boarding up the ancillary buildings in August, and then in November, the trust fully enclosed the unit, they finished the full enclosure unit around segment 3 building. And the trustee, Roberto, will go into more details on the recent progress. He'll be speaking right after me. Slide 40, please. As a reminder, EPA has a website in both English and in Spanish that we use to provide additional information, such as documents, the approved budget, technical memos, past presentations, including this presentation will go up, and all the latest updates on the facility work. Every Tuesday, weekly updates on work progress are posted on the website in coordination with the trust. A good example of the weekly content was in some of the postings we did late September, early October. We detailed that the trust did conduct a groundwater monitoring event and that the data will be available in the beginning of the new year. The website is the way that the trust and the EPA can communicate with the community, both as an informational source and also as a way to contact us if you have any questions. The contact information for me and the trustee, Roberto, is on the website. So please feel free to contact us at any time with any questions or concerns on the facility work. Thank you for being here tonight and listening to the progress. Up next is Roberto with the trustee for the BERT.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for your participation tonight. My name is Roberto Puga, and I'm the trustee of the Vernon Environmental Response Trust. And tonight, I'm going to summarize the progress that we made over the last few months at the former Exide facility in Vernon, California. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to be talking about tonight is one, I want to go through the progress we've done on the work to decontaminate and deconstruct the industrial facilities at the site. And also like to review our ambient air results, which I am also very glad to say have been very good over the last few months. And lastly, I'll summarize the remaining work the BERT has in its scope. Next slide, please. All right, so you've all seen this before. I use this as a good place holder to track our progress. This is an aerial photograph over taking a picture of the site over the main industrial installations at the site. This is from March of this year. Back then, we had a full enclosure unit around segment 2. Segment 2 was the actual lead smelter on the facility. And by March, we had completed the decontamination and deconstruction of the structures within the smelter and the smelter building itself. And we were moving towards dismantling the FEU and then re-erecting it around segment 3. Next slide, please. In May, you can see that the skin of the FEU had mostly come off, and you can see the bare poles of the scaffolding that provide the structural element for the FEU. And you can also see that the scaffolding was begun to be erected around segment 3. Segment 3 is the baghouse building. It is the building that held those process units that were used by Exide to provide negative air pressure and dust filtration from the various processes that occurred at the site. Next slide, please. In June, you can see in segment 2, the scaffolding had been taken away. You can see the former floor of the smelter building has been paved over, and we are at this point concentrating solely on working on segment 3. You can see more of the scaffolding around segment 3 as we prepared to take the 6 stacks that you see poking out of the roof down, and also complete the roof installation for the segment 3 FEU. All Right, next slide, please. And then in September, again, you can see the progress we've made on the installation of the FEU. You can see that all the scaffolding had been erected, that we had put the skin on the walls of the FEU, and we're working on putting the roof panels over the roof trusses over the segment 3 FEU. So by September, we were pretty close to completing the construction of the FEU. And while we were doing that, we were able to begin some work inside the building in decontaminating and deconstructing some of the units within the building itself. We were able to accomplish this because we used the building as the airtight enclosure. And so we were able to do that work inside the building under negative pressure. And then we were able to do that work in a safe manner. Next slide, please. And in November this month, you can see that the segment 3 FEU is completed and fully functional. And by November, we had done quite a bit of progress in decontaminating and deconstructing the units inside the baghouse building. And we're preparing to begin actually working on decontaminating and deconstructing the actual building walls and roof. Next slide, please. So here you can see inside of the segment 3 interior in September, you can see us doing decontamination and deconstruction. Those units that you see still standing are the baghouse units in the baghouse stacks. You can see from the wet floor that we constantly kept all of the deconstruction activities being done not only in a negative pressure environment, but also under wet construction methodology. Next slide, please. And then in November, same building, you can see that all of the major units within the building had been deconstructed by this point. They were deconstructed and then they were cleaned. They were cut into manageable pieces, and then the metal was recycled. And then any waste that we found were appropriately characterized and disposed of. Next slide, please. And again, in November, you can see here on the wall, you can see our contractor starting to tear down or deconstruct panel by panel the walls of the building. They will take down all the walls. This week, they had done quite a bit of progress on this. And once the walls are down, they will start taking the roof panels off and then work on the structural members. Again, all this is done under negative pressure using wet construction methods. Next slide, please. So ambient air, in the last 2 ETAG meetings, we went over, we had an incident in the summer when we were deconstructing the segment 2 FEU, where we had some elevated lead monitoring levels. You can see that's the spike you see there. Since then, since about mid-June to now, we have been significantly below the standard. The standard is the green line you see on the graph. This is a result of some very hard work by our contractors and by the VERT team to identify the causes for the spike and then implement enhanced dust mitigation measures to get that back under control. And then we've been very pleased with the results. Since then, we haven't had any sort of a repeat of elevated dust concentrations. And then working with our agency partners, we keep a very close eye on it. And it seems that the techniques we're using are working very well. And but we still watch it every day and are prepared to take any enhanced measures that we may need to. Next slide, please. And this shows the ambient air monitoring graphs for arsenic. We did not have a similar issue with arsenic. The arsenic levels, through our entire tenure at the site have been significantly below the permit limit. And again, our contractors are doing a great job of keeping an eye on dust emissions and, and are ready to respond to any potential upsets. Next slide, please. So, some of the dust suppression measures that are ongoing now, and now that the segment 3 FEU is constructed and fully operational, that is the main suppression measure. The negative air environment, prohibits dust emissions to come through the walls of the FEU. The pictures show a couple of the assurances that we have to make sure that the FEU is operating correctly. On the bottom left-hand side, you see the pressure monitors. There's a series of pressure monitors that monitors the pressure at various points around the FEU. These monitors are checked manually a couple times a day by the resident engineer who represents the VERT, by our DTSC partners and their oversight folks. The data is transmitted to the South Coast AQMD and EPA and DTSC. In addition, there's a data logger that records all of the readings from all the monitors. And it's also rigged to tell us if there is a pressure upset by sending out call-out notices to key folks. So if we do have, an issue in the middle of the night, our contractors and us at the VERT will get a notice so we can respond immediately. We haven't had an issue like that, but we have all the protocols in place to make sure that the pressure in the FEU is monitored, not only while we're there working, but when we're not there, at nighttime and on the weekends. And then the bottom right-hand side picture shows the wet conditions in that we work within the FEU. So even though we're relying on the FEU to work in a negative pressure environment, we still do wet construction measures, wetting everything down, again, to mitigate dust issues as much as possible. Next slide, please. And then, we have in dust suppression measures that will definitely, employ during the scaffolding dismantlement work. So once we're done with the work within segment 3, and taking lessons learned from the dismantlement of segment 2, we'll have enhanced dust suppression measures such as windscreens, water cannons, and perimeter misting systems, again, to mitigate any potential dust issues. Next slide, please. And for the remaining VERT work, once we complete the segment 3 work and then begin the dismantlement of the segment 3 FEU, we will have to take down the turret backhouse units. These units are currently providing the negative air pressure within segment 3. So once we're done with segment 3, we'll need to decontaminate and deconstruct those baghouse units. And then at the same time that we're working in segment 3, we're doing some other cleanup work that includes tank cleanouts at the wastewater treatment plant, and then the decontamination and deconstruction of container storage areas. We've had some challenges this year, but I'm very proud of our team. We've met the challenges. We've been able to keep the work going, even though we've had some delays, due to some permitting issues and to the dust issue we had this summer. But we've been able to keep the project moving, and together with our agency partners, we've met the challenges that we've been confronted with. I think in a very constructive and collaborative manner. I want to commend everyone that we're working with, DTSC, EPA, South Coast, HMD, and our contracting team. in meeting the challenges at the site and, working positively to keep the project moving. And, as the BERT is getting close to completing the scope that we set out for ourselves, at the end of, at the end of October of last year, it's surprising to me that we've been only at the site for 1 year. On August 26th is when the BERT take over the oversight of the site. And, within that year, we've been able to accomplish quite a bit, and by the end of this year into the first part of 2022, the main industrial units at the site, the receiving and lead storage building, the lead smelter, the bag house building, these are the main industrial facilities at the site, will be gone. And will no longer be a source of potential emissions. And we're pretty proud of that. And so we just want to work collaboratively with our team members and kind of get to the end of our scope. And I just want to thank everyone that's worked with us, on what I would consider a pretty successful project so far.
Thank you, Roberto. Jason Espel.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I don't have any slides to present. I will be providing a verbal update, but I'm Jason Aspel. I'm Deputy Executive Officer in the Engineering and Permitting Division at South Coast AQMD. First off, I want to thank everyone who is here tonight. I know we, South Coast AQMD, had our AB 617 Community Steering Committee tonight, and there was slight overlap for our East LA, Boyle Heights, West Commerce area. So any of you who are pulling double duty with meetings tonight, thank you. But I'll keep my update very brief, but I'll be getting into monitoring and permitting efforts. As Roberto already presented, ambient air monitoring results at the fence line monitors have been compliant. Recent results have been compliant with our Rule 1420.1 for both lead and arsenic. Expanding on an update I provided last time is VERT has their 5 fence line monitors as required by rule and their Title V permit. South Coast AQMD also has 3 of our own ambient air monitors. Those were originally installed for quality assurance purposes when Exide was operating the site. So our last update, due to resource considerations, South Coast AQMD was going to alter the operation of those monitors. But first we actually have to get approval from EPA from that. We have submitted a system modification request to EPA, and that is still under review. That might, vary, or an estimation is that might be done by the end of the year. But I do want to explain that again, is the R3 monitors will still be in place. 3 will go on standby mode and be ready to operate if there are any anticipated, activities, deconstruction activities outside of the full enclosure unit. The monitor that we operate on the east side of the facility at Rerig Pacific will still be sampling 1 in 6 days. Since this has not been approved by EPA yet, those monitors are still operating side by side with VERT's monitors. So we will be providing updates, as they happen in regards to that. But again, those are still taking ambient air monitoring samples, and they are in line with the results that VERT has been getting with their fence line monitors. All of our ambient air readings for our monitors are on our website that can be accessed at www.aqmd.gov. And the easiest way to find that is just to type in Exide in the search bar, and it will be the first result. On our permitting side, there has not been any new activity for permitting. We are awaiting a submittal from VERT for their Title V permit renewal application. The permit expires on May 25th in 2022. If VERT wishes to take advantage of application shield provision, those applications have to be in by November 26th. So we've been in contact with VERT about those applications, and we are awaiting their submittal. For everyone's information, once we do process those permits or those applications before the renewal is issued, there is a public participation component to that. There will be a public notice and a 30-day public comment period for that permit. Typically during a permit renewal, it is mostly an administrative process where certain units that have been deconstructed or removed from the permit. That still will be available for public comment. There has been some discussion with VERT about some upcoming projects, and we are awaiting proposals from VERT on those projects as well. But that concludes my update for South Coast State Community.
Thank you so much, Jason. Appreciate your updates. And I want to thank all of our presenters on the Exide facility, Amanda Cruz, Roberto Puga, and Jason Espel for being here this evening. I do want to get back to some of our questions and comments. And the first one is in our Q&A feature. And it is from Zoom user. And his comment is, I have more of a comment. This program has changed my whole life. And I look at community help in a whole new light. I am grateful for this program for giving me a better life and a greater opportunity to be productive. I was in the first work program class. Thank you. My name is Halit Baptiste. Oh, that's very nice. Thank you, Halit, for that. And we are so happy that this has made a positive impact on your life. We appreciate you taking the time to make that comment. And next, I have a question from Steph. And actually, I think he has two questions. I'll go ahead and read both. Steph asks, what are you going to do about the abusive conduct that the companies do to the community workers? And then also another question is, just like the last incident, I had a foreman, Billy, I won't use the name, but I had a foreman, he said it all looked dirty. These are the type of mentality we are constantly dealing with, from NEC boss to operators. No one is taking accountability in these companies. And so I'm gonna see if I can get Mehdi Batahar or Pete Rattan to address some of these concerns from Steph.
Yeah, thank you, Dion, and thank you, Steph. This is the reason why today in my presentation, I spent a little bit more time emphasizing that we are working collaboratively and closely with both the union, the contractor, and with the community representatives. So we should expect here in a few weeks a meeting that will bring all the parties at the table. We need to have an open, professional conversation to see how best we can avoid those situations in the future. So the voice of the community is going to be heard, and it's going to be part of this conversation too.
Thank you so much. And we have time. We have one last question from Maru. How many parcels are planned to be cleaned up for 2022? What is the current monthly cleaning rate?
Yeah, I would say that we have in average about 18 property a week. That gives us between, I would say between 60 and 80 property a month. And I can't give you a firm answer here because weather is a big factor. When it rains, usually all the sites shut down for the duration of the rain. And when you look at the full year, you have about, 3 months of rain. So we anticipate and we hope that we can get the highest number. But if we get between 700 and 800, that would be a very good number. And again, I will reiterate that we are going to have and keep 30 active crews in the field at all times.
Thank you so much for that, Mehdi. Appreciate it. And so I believe that that will do it. I want to thank you all for sharing this collaborative space with us this evening. We appreciate you all for taking the time out to be here and asking your questions and making your comments. We look forward to your continued discussions. We have come to the end of this meeting because we are coming upon 7:30. And again, I do want to be mindful of all of our participants here. But before we close, I would like to thank our DTSC staff, USCPA, VERT, and South Coast AQMD for their presentations here this evening. And I would also like to thank our Spanish translator, Madeline Reyes, for her interpretation services. At this time, I want to turn it over to our co-chairs for their closing remarks and to close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dion. Before I make my closing remarks, I do want to make sure our ETAG members get a chance to ask any remaining questions. And I think that's critical. This meeting is designed for their input, their guidance, their engagement, and I want to make sure that we make room for that. We took some extra time with some of the public questions, but and I think Dr. Wells had a question. Is that the case?
Yes, thanks, Meredith. And I don't want to be the guy that forces this to go over and have all of us miss our dinner, but I did have a quick question. There was an announcement a couple days ago about a settlement that had been arrived at between the other Exide Remediation Trust and bankruptcy court and EPA for $17 million for cleanup of other orphaned Exide sites. And I was just wondering if anyone at DTSC or EPA could give us a little info about that. While I don't think anybody begrudges other orphaned Exide sites around the country from getting some resources to clean up their sites, we also have such a strong interest in making sure we get our share.
I have to just say I was unaware of this settlement, and I don't know. I don't know if anybody from our legal team or Grant Cope is on the line. I think we have some legwork to do around that. That's what I suspect. But Amanda, did you want to comment?
I actually was just going to say, because it sounded like the settlement was with EPA and then the other sites outside of Exide. And as you know, in the bankruptcy settlement, Exide Vernon was specifically called out separate from the other trust sites. So if it was a settlement between EPA, DOJ, and the other facilities, that's something I actually have no pulse on at all. I'm just on this facility.
That is my understanding of what that was, Amanda. And, only of relevance because it's coming out of the same pot, that Vern is drawing from.
Right.
So what I can do is I can reach out to our the attorneys up at headquarters who, worked on all of the settlement, not just the Vernon, and see if there's any more information. I could get, if you have any specific questions on that, please, feel free to shoot me an email. That way I get, a more concise answer. But it sounds like you're just looking for some context of how more money was found. Is that a good summary of what the question is?
Yeah. Just kind of how that fits in with the general allocation of incredibly limited resources from outside.
Okay.
I do want to allow our Deputy Director, Grant Cope, he looks like he wanted to.
I was gonna say exactly what Amanda said.
Okay.
There's two separate pots. There's two separate parts of the bankruptcy. There's Vernon and then there's other. So I was just gonna repeat what she said.
Right. If I may, this is Roberto Puga. If I may, Dr. Wells, I'm also the trustee of the other Exide Trust. You know, I have not heard of any new settlements, and certainly we haven't received $17 million into the other trust. You know, that trust was established at the same time as the Vernon Trust was last October. And, you know, we got frankly, another limited amount of money to work on 16 other sites across the country. But I have not heard that there's been an additional settlement.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. Yeah, there was a news report that a trustee for the bankruptcy estate of battery recycler Exide has reached an agreement with EPA to provide for $17 million. I don't know anything more about it.
Okay. Well, Dr. Wells, I'll ask my agency partners on the other trust if you know, for more details if they have it, and I will transmit any information I get to DTSC that can send it to you if I'm able to find anything.
Sounds good. Appreciate that.
Jim, could I ask that you maybe put the link to the article you were reading in the chat? That way I can send that with some little bit more context to the attorneys when I try and get some information. Oh, always that. Okay, there we go. Thank you. And by the way, I'm sorry, my family just got home, so there's a lot of background noise at my house. So I'm sorry about that.
Okay. Dr. Williams is much more savvy than I am. I don't think I would have been able to accomplish that. So thank you.
Once y'all get an assessment of what the situation is, maybe if somebody at DTSC can send out that information so we can all be updated on what the situation is, that'd be great.
We can definitely do that, Mark. That won't be a problem. And what I want to do is, it sounds like we just want to do one more quick round and see if there's any other pending questions. And so I wanted to—
From the ETAG members in particular.
From our ETAG members. And it looks like Pete has his hand raised. So Pete, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just wanted to touch a little bit on what Steph had asked in regards to the incidents that happened. One, I just want to say that incidents like that don't happen overnight, and there's more incidents that have happened that I've witnessed and experienced out there. So I just want to emphasize how important it is to get back on track and try to get that meeting. And if we have any tentative dates, I know Thanksgiving, the holidays are coming up, but I think it's very important to start getting the dates on that. And if possible, you know, have a little bit more than a week prior notice on that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pete. Appreciate that. Do we have any other ETAG members? I don't see any other hands raised at this time. So, Dr. Williams, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think that we have exhausted our ETAG members' questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for your participation, for the questions. It's good to hear your voices, get them into the conversation. We will look at the wide range of issues that were addressed. Mehdi made a number of commitments to you. We also will continue to look at this meeting and the format and figure out what else we can do to ensure good engagement, good participation. I know it must be frustrating not to be able to access those links and things. So we definitely need a solution to that. So we're going to keep looking at that. And thank you to ETAG members for your continued service, for your continued work with us on this, and for digging in. And thank you to our partners from EPA, VERT, South Coast So I wish you all a great Thanksgiving. I know I am thankful for everyone's commitment to this work and to protecting their communities, protecting the places that you live. I heard, as did Mehdi, the request, the suggestion, the encouragement for us to get out there and be on the ground. Our Chief Deputy Director, Francesca Negri, had a chance to do that just a few weeks ago, and you just can't replace that. You can't replace the seeing it with your own eyes, really getting a better understanding of what those, what it is we're talking about, and moving away from them being abstract ideas. And I take that very much to heart. And it's been a while. I haven't traveled much under COVID, and I'm reluctant to do so, but I think the time has come. So I hope to get out there and really have a look on the ground. So thank you very much, Mark.
Yeah, I think our mind is definitely in the same place in regard to evaluating the space. I think I appreciate the challenges, the kind of pushing for more engagement in the space, or how to figure out how to make the space more engaging. I think that's a positive sign, right? I think if there's zero engagement, if nobody's showing up, that's a huge red flag. People wanting more conversation, more transparency, that's not a red flag for me. That's like, okay, let's figure this out. Let's get to work, right? And I think I come to every single one of these meetings looking at this as a working meeting, right? So what's brought up? Okay, what are we going to do about that? What are the next steps we can take? How are we going to follow up? And so just really appreciate the folks on the DTSC end who are taking some of that and are going to be doing that follow up. And again, just really appreciative of everybody who put in the multiple hours today to tune in, to wait to be heard, to make sure to be heard. That's important every single time, right? And I think we're not where we were, right? And we're constantly pushing forward to where we want to be. And sometimes there is reoccurring issues, and we want to make sure that we keep hearing that and that we keep working to address that, and I think definitely, I want to acknowledge Steph in particular, who we heard from at the last meeting, who we're hearing from again in this meeting, because I've talked to a couple of workers since the last meeting, and there is really a sense from some folks that the current contractor just has gone too far, right? I think we've seen the tensions build and kind of the extreme, violent interaction at a work site is something I've never expected to see as part of this process. And so I think in that regard, we're also in kind of uncharted territory with trying to figure out how this moves forward. But, so I'm definitely concerned about where we go from here, but committed to continuing to be in conversation to figure that out with everyone. So again, thank y'all. Hopefully you have some, good times with your friends and family over this holiday season, and be safe.
Thank you both, co-chairs. We appreciate you. And we want to thank again our public members for attending the ETAG meeting. And we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. We will have that information posted on our website and notify you. But thank you. Have a good Thanksgiving holiday next week. We appreciate you, and be safe.